I feel that human values cannot be taught in the classroom, but the history of human rights is the chemistry of human values. They cannot be injected by a doctor or a nurse. They cannot also be preached from a pulpit. They are not the domain of a saint or a seer or some other elevated soul. It is something which has to flow in our veins. And to ensure that human rights work, we have to imbibe all those human values. I was discussing all this while I had a short encounter with the key resource person who specializes in this. And we both agreed that without imparting human values, the very purpose of education would get lost. Sadly enough, from educational institutions, we are producing doctors, engineers, administrators, technocrats, technicians, scientists, frankly, not human beings. Educational institutes only impart degrees. They give you a piece of paper of after a certain portion of time you spend in an institution. But that doesn't turn into a true human being. The topic of today's seminar is education and human rights. I think no education would be complete if we cannot turn our students into true human beings. This is very important. Swami Dayanand, the founder of the RS Samaj, believed in man making education. Swami Vivekananda, who founded the Ramakrishna Mission, also stressed on that idea. And many more Renaissance leaders of 19th century, maybe it was Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Atmaram Pandurang, M.G. Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar, or some other, including Vivekananda, Abhedanand and many more people, belong to that cultural Renaissance period. They spoke of human values. All these words that you hear glibly nowadays in cultural fora, in international seminars, they focus only on Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was made possible by the United Nations as a result of the catastrophe of World War II. But we forget that these noble ideals, which ensure the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to save oneself from exploitation, the right to save oneself from other nasty and nefarious things, they have existed in ancient times, in ancient societies. And India being the oldest, and Aryan civilization being the oldest in that sense and also the youngest, it was the first to propound these ideals. It is a sad fact that we did not adhere to those ideas. We did not stick to those ideals. For example, you look to the Vedic literature and the basis of Vedanta is Tattvamasi, that thou art. You are He. If you see God in the other, even if not God, a human being in the other, you would not be inhuman. But the sort of education which is being imparted nowadays in all the universities, whether they get 5-star from NAC or get some international recognition, they are not unfortunately recognizing this fact where students have to be turned human. We do not want to produce doctors, rather we should not, who take out money from the pockets of those who are physically suffering. We do not want to produce lawyers who, in the language of Mahatma Gandhi, become liars and try to prove that Ajmal Kasab is right and so is Afjal or our Buller from Punjab or anybody for that matter, irrespective of caste, color, creed, nationality, race or distinction. We do not want to produce technocrats, who fleece. And we do not want to have people fighting against corruption who are themselves corrupt, They may be doing certain things in a very clandestine way, as we saw in the headline of Indian Express yesterday. I don't want to name that. The point is this, that the concept of human rights in its present form, in its present connotation, and in its present multidimensional aspects is different from what it existed before. You cannot say that these rights did not exist, that these ideals were not there. They were. When you read the Buddha, the Gospel of the Buddha, the Four Truths and the Eightfold Path, especially in the Eightfold Path, you have the signs of human rights. From where does the concept of Bahujan Hitaye and Bahujan Sukhaye emerge? You look to the Vedas and you have so many phrases and hymns coming directly by way of intuition to the Rishi's mind, rather supermind, where you see that a man has to be considered as man, and not only as man, every creature of the world, even a cockroach, is to be considered a living being and is to be respected. When you pluck a root or a plant, when you take away a flower, maybe a rose flower, for the purpose of making a bouquet, you are not sensitive. You have to be sensitive. I have seen when I was a student in England where I could not move on grass, because that was the first thing I used to do in any Indian park. We would go and then jump on grass. But in the UK and in many parts of Europe, I saw the sign, keep off grass. So much sensitivity even towards grass, although the same people exploit humans and do certain nasty and nefarious things. This nastiness, this nefariousness, this animality, that is a part of human nature and human character. And human being has not changed. You may not have 10 heads like Ravan, but the Ravan in you lives, You may not be the Satan in that sense of the term, where the Bible speaks of him, but the Satan lies within us. The purpose of education and the purpose of this seminar is to ensure, to take steps that the Satan is not allowed to have his way or her way, if it is feminine. We have also to look to another fact. All ancient religions, all ancient cultures, despite primitivism, despite wars, the most condemned Manusmriti, Manav Dharma Shastra, if you read that, you would be surprised that the sort of things which are being put in the name of human rights, they exist already there. You cannot hurt a man when he is sleeping. Not that a man is sleeping and you kill him. Maybe he is Osama bin Laden. Even a Gaddafi can have his human right, because his last words were, do not shoot. As a proponent of human rights, he could have said, I am a human, so I have right to survive and exist and answer all your questions and answer all your accusations. But that doesn't exist, because in common personal life, despite all the hullabaloo over the concept of human rights, the theory about human rights, the inculcation of human rights theory in the syllabus, the international meets and conferences, what we are exactly trying to do is something which is subhuman, not human. We are moving from inhumanity to subhumanity, where we serve our purposes maybe on the basis of caste, color, creed, race, nationality or some other thing. To be human is to be human, and you are human because you can become divine. Animals cannot do that. There is a great difference. So when we speak of human rights, obviously we have to speak of the concept of righteousness, the divine law, the law of dharma. We have to speak of values like truth and non-violence, which exist in such an abundant manner in Buddhism and Jainism, and in the Vedic scriptures. But as you know, and I agree with the French philosopher Hobbes, who said that man is a gregarious animal, because when Rousseau said that man is a social animal, he agreed with that with some of his contemporary philosophers. He said that man is born free, but he's in chains. What are those chains? They are obviously laid by humans, not by animals. Have you ever seen an animal doing something inhuman to a person? Whatever he does, he would do it in a beastly manner. He is a beast. But when a human becomes a beast, whether he commits plunder or rape or becomes a terrorist or takes away human rights in an intellectual way, makes some people refugees in some part of the land or the other, obviously he is not just inhuman, he is brutal. He ceases to be human. That is the purpose of human rights. Don't think that all this began in Europe. I was discussing this aspect with our honorable and worthy resource person, and he agreed with that. You cannot speak of ancient Europe, as our worthy Vice Chancellor was saying, but you can speak of ancient India, and ancient India lives. He lives in modern India. I still remember when my father expired, and I was shattered for the first time in my life. And that Pandit or Purohit, whosoever came, he told me that your father is not dead. He lives in you. Ancient India lives in modern India. And it lives there because of the ancient values which are permanent. The sun rises in the east. It will continue to rise in the east. We respect truth. We want to be righteous. We want to be honest. We want to be men of integrity. Can education give us all that? Before 13th century, you do not have much of Britain. You speak of a king who was encroaching upon the right of the church, and then there was Magna Carta in 1215. You have the British Bill of Rights and subsequently the American Bill of Rights, which followed 1776, American War of Independence. You have the French Revolution of 1789, when for the first time National Assembly was created and the Declaration of Rights of Man was made. But then what happened? The French Revolution began with the talk of human rights, but then was born Napoleon, the child of the French Revolution, who killed his mother. But I tell you that all those who grab human rights, all those who take away human privileges, they meet the same end. I am remembered of so many tyrants, being a student of history, so many despots whose life ended in vain. As long as they lived in an inhuman, bestial way. When revolution took place in Austria, our worthy Vice Chancellor studied there in Austria-Hungary, I suppose. There was one ruler, Metternich. Metternich had to hide himself in a laundry basket when revolution took place in 1848. And the same happened with Charles X, when he was ruler of France. And what happened to Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI? Students of history know they were guillotined. A tyrant dies the same way, the way Gaddafi has faced. You may or may not believe in karma theory or reincarnation. That is not the purpose of a human rights discourse. But the fact of the matter is that the psychological aspects of man's nature, the biological aspects of man's nature, the sociological aspects of man's nature, and the history of what man has done to man in a brutal way, that history has to be remembered when we speak of human rights. Because that man in us has not died. The corrupt man is within us. The brutal man is within us. And the assassin is within us. You may just blame a Nathuram Godse or somebody else for that, but then the assassin may also be lying in a Mahatma. What you look at the outset, what you appear before the people is something different, but from what you really are. Unless and until education tries to change the very conscience of people, tries to go to that route where not only knowledge is embedded, but virtue is also embedded. In Greece, Plato and Aristotle and many more people, you may even speak of Sophocles and Theophrastus, they spoke of one thing, virtue. And virtue has been a great thing. And the sort of human rights which become covenants or a part of the Indian Constitution, Part 3 or Part 4, which is non-justiciable, Part 3 which is justiciable, and many more acts and many more enactments which are already made or which are in the making, whether they concern women or they concern people belonging to a certain category, they concern children or they concern humans, All those things, they have their roots in the natural law of piety. If you cannot create a man after killing him, you have no right to kill him. You cannot restore the dignity of a woman who has been molested. You cannot restore the life of a person who has been killed. These are some of the things. But nowadays, human rights are both used and abused. I do not know whether you would agree with me in this respect. But without delving deep into that, I see it in the domain of politics. I see it in the domain of economics. I see it even in the cultural domain. Not only in India, all over the world. We choose new methods of exploitation. We don't break rules and regulations. We choose new methods to override those rules, to override those laws, and exploitation continues. So that canker of exploitation within man has to be taken out with true education, what the Vedas called Vidya, true Vidya, not avidya. Avidya is something, learning engineering, learning art, learning this, learning that, so that you can make your both hands meet. But then realizing yourself, learning and realizing are dichotomous, they are two different things. When you learn, you just learn. You take up what others have said. You remember what others have said. But when you realize things come from within, things pour from within. Human dignity can be maintained only if there is a change in conscience. Only if we bring about a renaissance of values. These things cannot be solved just by seminars. I was discussing with our resource person, he said that I am here to ignite the spark of human rights among students and even teachers who do not know what human rights are. But I feel that nowadays, when human rights are violated to the extent and in such an intelligent manner that the human right, they just cannot be, the person cannot be caught, when he does an infringement. At that stage, only the voice of our conscience can tell us, because it is always present there. You are doing some mischief, you are committing theft, you are shooting a person, you are molesting a woman, and you are doing it because nobody is there. And you do it because you are a politician. You are doing something wrong with our ecology because you are in power. The laws of the land will take their own course, but then the laws of conscience, which Emerson and Thoreau once propounded in America, inspired by the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, those laws need to be established in every human heart through education. And I tell you that these Arya Samaj institutions were established in this region particularly just to ensure human rights for the weak, for the downtrodden, for those sections of society who suffered a lot. Otherwise, in 1940, there was no economic sense in establishing DAV institutions in Solapur. So this is a fact which you need to understand. This is a sacred institution, and it is sacred not because of the quantity of students or the grand list of alumni which we have, it is great and sacred because it is being run and governed by certain ideals. And you are here not just to get B.Ed or M.Ed or some other degree, you are here to imbibe all those ideals. The ideals live, not the man. Swami Dayanand is not with us. Swami Vivekananda is not with us. All the prophets of the world, from Moses to Christ to Zoroaster to Muhammad to Guru Nanak, they are not here. But then they live through their ideals and we respect them, we adore them, and sometimes we also fight for them because they were men of ideals. That is what education has to taught us. The concept of human rights, the varied dimensions of human rights, and the concept which has proliferated into so many dimensions, I feel that it is quite comprehensive, even to comprehend what to speak in 10-15 minutes, the time which was allotted to me. So I feel that the awareness about human rights, at least the theoretical awareness, as also the practical aspects and implications of it, those need to be imbibed. You speak of human rights, but before you go to bed, think, did you infringe on the human right of another person? You are a professor, you are a principal, did you speak ill of a colleague? Did you abuse your colleague because it was within your right as principal or as local secretary to say something and the other is not in a position to respond? Did you just put your foot on the neck of the downtrodden because you happen to be in a top position? Did you make somebody subservient and took away his rights to live and exist with dignity? This pedagogic talk has its value, but human rights have to become a part of the daily routine. Wherever we work, whatever we do, whatever our plans, whatever our futures, we must make sure that we listen to the voice of conscience. For the information of the vast audience here and the presentation that you will see, perhaps Henry David Thoreau was the first man who used this term of human rights in the sense in which it is being used nowadays, and inspired not only Tolstoy but also Mahatma Gandhi. All those big people who lived, not that the tyrants do not live, tyrants also live, despots also live, they cannot be taken away from history, but we have to stick to our culture. In Punjab, when we do prayer in a Sikh church or a Gurudwara, we say, Nanak naam chaddi kala, tere pane sarbat da pala. In the name of Nanak, in the name of God, welfare of all. It is the same Bahujan Utaye, Bahujan Sukhaye. It is the same as in the Bible, love thy neighbor as thyself. It is the same as in the Vedas, that thou art. It is the same in all noble, virtuous, inspired literature, which came down not from the level of mind, but which came above from that level. That is what I would say. अपनी मिट्टी पे चलने का तरीका सीखो, संगे मरमर पे चलोगे तो फिसल जाओगे. As long as you confine yourself to theories of human rights, to what is happening at the international plane, borrowing those theories. Now you tell me, we talk of slavery, we talk of feudalism. Being a student of history, I know that there were feudal lords, and feudalism was an established institution. But you show feudal institutions in ancient India. Sadly enough, some Delhi scholars who are now in great power in the field of history, they found out the root of feudalism in Indian society. We Indians didn't have the concept of slavery in ancient India, although it existed in a different form when the caste system was exploited, which had its own usefulness in that time, but which left it, or it was eroded after that. So we have to make sure that we stick to our culture and traditions, as our worthy Vice Chancellor said, and that we ensure that whenever we do something in our practical life, We may not be able to go to the United Nations to attend some conference, or may not be the key speaker like our Reddy Sahab, or may not be able to preside over the function like our Vice Chancellor, but at least to ourselves, with ourselves, we have to be sincere and we have to commit ourselves to the ideal of humanity. And if that ideal is established through education, I think the purpose of DAV would be served. Thank you very much.